Morning, Kishan.
Wonderful.
Today we're going to talk about a couple of articles concerning software modernization and especially talking about buy and build strategies. So we selected two articles, one of McKinsey and one that was published in Business Wire. So the first one is this one. I'll put on my screen here. It's about a specific sector, how insurers can successfully modernize core systems, and it gives actually a very nice insight in different ways on our buy and build strategies, the dimensions. They describe some of the dimensions, the options. It's a very elaborate post, really McKinsey style, but there is some value in it, I think, for us or for our listeners. So we're going to talk a bit about this one. And what they say or mention is that building from scratch is becoming more rare because of the traps. It traps your innovation with regards to the go live. But on the other side, buying off-the-shelf software is also not a silver bullet, as it requires adapting your business to fit the software. McKinsey argues that building a custom platform locks in a company, and I think mainly secondary, over time, the documentation makes it impossible to evolve, but I think that's a side thing. So a question to you, Kishan. When you would look under the hood, as you do when you do an architecture review, how often do you see like the custom legacy systems that were once innovative are now completely frozen, that you cannot really build upon it anymore? How do you or we help the CTO to untangle that mess, so to speak?
So the thing is that most of these companies that have these types of giant systems, it is an evolution over time, right? This doesn't happen overnight. And the main goal that most companies want to reach is that they want to get ahead of their competition, but also they are stuck in the same process and they cannot really optimize. And it's not really a system thing by itself, but it's also the system framing certain possibilities for a company because they have these limitations inside of their IT systems. How many times do we see it? We see it often, almost every time actually, because the company starts out very innovative. They have a system that they want to build, or they have built or implemented that was cutting edge at the time. They implemented that when they were still, let's say, young and nimble. So it's easier to adapt to the system, but also to adapt your processes. They have grown with the system to a certain level, and now they want to upgrade, but now the upgrade is either way too costly, or the system and the way of working is so entangled with each other that it's very hard to get out of that without completely revamping the way you do things. That is mainly the problem that most of these companies are facing, is that it's not an either or thing. You cannot just replace the system at a certain moment anymore, because the system is basically telling the company how it should work. And that has always been the case for the past decades, for example. So that means that it's not just upgrading the system, but also upgrading the company and their processes.
And I think that hits the spot in the sense of what they call in the McKinsey article, the software as a service conformity versus the unique business rules. And in the article, McKinsey points out that buying the off-the-shelf software means that the business should adapt its processes to fit the software, and not the other way around when you build a product of your own. And you mentioned before, obviously in talks that we had, that the companies, almost each company has its unique processes, unique ways of doing things because of many different reasons, but it can be compliance or contractual reasons. So have you seen in the past, like if a company buys an off-the-shelf product or a platform to save time, which is obviously a good reason, they need to sacrifice unique workflows. How do you do like a balancing act? Or obviously we inform or consult with our clients before we are going to start building things. Sometimes we also use components, off-the-shelf software components. How is this conversation going? And how do you tell a client that their business rules that they now have might not fit the SaaS solution if they pick one? Where is that middle ground? And how is it about money? Is it about time? Can you tell a bit about that?
So there's multiple ways that companies go about this. And honestly, most of them don't do it really well, because as you probably hear in the news quite often, that there are big implementations that go wrong, and they spend millions upon millions to get an IT system onboarded, but it fails. Why does it fail? Most of the time it's because there is no cohesion between business and IT. So it either becomes an IT project where the business doesn't really want to be involved, but again, it's a business that needs to leverage the IT and vice versa to be successful, or it's becoming a business project where the business just buys something based on their own requirements, but has no grasp of what the IT landscape actually looks like, and it fails in the integration part. So what do we usually do? We try to do it bottom up. So we try to get a sense of what's there. We try to paint the landscape that we have now, and also not do a one size fits all, because that's what most bigger companies also like to do. They want to change everything at once because they want to upgrade everything at once, because they want to put everything in one system. That's usually not possible because there's a lot of different processes that cannot be handled by just one system. And if there was one system that could do everything, there would be no need of doing these investigations or research, because everybody would already buy that system because it could do everything. What we usually do is go with the business and the IT to see what's there, what the different components are doing, how they are interacting with each other. And from that investigation, from that research, once we have a better grasp of what's there and how it's being used, that takes time and effort from us and the company itself. We can then see what components can be upgraded to have the biggest wins for them. So you can see where a lot of manual processes are, or you can see where the system is hampering the company's either time to market or time to execute. So we don't do it as, hey, we want to upgrade your process, and this is the SaaS. These are the 3 SaaS systems that you can use for it, and you either pick one of them or you don't do anything at all. We try to see where we can make the biggest impact, and then either build something or buy something that can create that impact.
I think we'll come back to that in the next article also a bit, but McKinsey also touches upon this point, but they say something more or less about building a wrapper, a modern wrapper around the old system, the old application. We once, or in a previous article review, we called that the shitty foundation that you don't want to touch or build upon. But in a sense, could it be a quick fix in building a wrapper around a legacy system for specific purposes? Or is that from, especially then an engineering standpoint of view or point of view, is that a bad idea? And is it actually are you postponing some work that you need to be doing anyway?
It depends. So for some of the customers that we helped with these questions, it made sense for them to just keep the system as is, however old it was, just because it worked. It did what it needed to do, and they didn't need more functionalities to do that process. They wanted to add functionalities on the processes down the line or downstream. And in that way, it makes sense to extrapolate the data into either a new system that can give you those functionalities, or to wrap the data layer or the functionality layer and enhance that with the sort of functionalities downstream that they want to add onto it. So it makes sense if the core system doesn't really hamper the core process, but it limits you on doing things down the line.
It is really a matter of obviously analyzing what is stopping innovation and growth and new features and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the base question is also, what are you trying to reach? What value are you trying to get that you are not getting now? If you don't answer that question or don't have a thought about what you are trying to reach, even upgrading the system won't give you anything, because you can have a trajectory of 2 years and have a new system in place. But if you have no idea of what you actually want to do with it or what value the system needs to bring to you, the upgrade won't do anything for you.
And suppose so the core system works and functions and does what it needs to be doing, but with a wrapper, we could add new features that the users require. Suppose we do that, then you have 2 streams. You have your legacy software stream that you need to attend to, and you have your new wrapper application layer. Is this something that you would recommend, to have these 2 streams? If, of course, after analysis, it appears that is possible. Is that something that you see as a strong point, or is that a weak point in a sense?
It's a strong point in the sense that it's the fastest time to market. So if your users are asking for something and you have 2 ways of going about things, either you upgrade everything and it takes 2 years and it needs to revamp every department in your company, or you wrap what you have and add functionality for your end customers on top of that, so they are served in the way that they want to be served, but it doesn't compromise your company's processes. I think it's a very strong point. It's a flexible solution. It's obviously not the one size fits all solution for everyone, and it's not the solution that you want to continue forever, but it's a solution that brings you business value immediately without entering a transformational process, let's say it like that, because it is not an upgrade anymore. It's just a transformational process of both IT and the business to reach your end goal. But maybe when you reach that end goal, the customer's wishes also change or the landscape have changed, especially right now. If you go about transitioning anything, we don't know what it looks like in 2 years because technology is evolving so fast. So you might reach that goal that you wanted to reach, but the landscape might have changed. So you are already behind. So I think there's value in quickly adding functionality or features or value for your end customer without overhauling everything, if it makes sense.
And that decision on what to do all depends on the analysis. And I think we also, with our experience, made a decision tree of the different options and the ways, like the paths to these different options. So I think that would make sense for everyone that considers upgrading legacy systems to take a look at that. Next article, I think that ties into this analysis and insights from McKinsey is the Retool art. It is obviously sort of a hidden sponsored article from Retool on the Business Wire. But in any case, it is interesting because they have some insights. They did research, not 100% sure how much impact the research had from being from Retool in the results, but I think some insights we can discuss. And one of the main insights that they have from their research, the report says that enterprises are already replacing SaaS with custom software, obviously, but the numbers are quite high. And I think what's interesting is they have some points in the sense of where McKinsey warned about the custom builds that can lock in innovation because of the time to market. Retool shows that already more than 30% of the teams have replaced at least one software as a service tool with a custom build. And a very high number, almost 80%, expects to build more custom products within the organization in 2026. So what do you think? What do you make of this? Does this make sense? And especially using like components or code or maybe open source things to speed custom development up and using AI for rapid builds. Is this a good thing, or is this creating like a major legacy technical debt at record speed, like for the future, for the near future?
It's both. So the whole SaaS, I think they have a name for it, SaaS apocalypse or something. It is being fed by the whole AI boom, right? Every open source project is right now in some shape or form in an AI model, or not AI model, LLM model, and it can regurgitate most of these functionalities pretty right now. The thing is that a lot of SaaS tools that enterprises, not even enterprise companies buy, do one thing and one thing. The thing is that you can also easily build these one size fits all tools that do one thing really well by yourself. For example, we used to pay for a Kanban board. We don't need to do that right now because you can easily spin that up within a couple of hours and set that up. The problem you're creating is that there is no governance of these things. There is no sense of security. Everyone can prompt either Retool or whatever other AI builder tool there is to build these things for you. But that also means that you have no control of your information anymore. Customer information may live in 20 different systems you have no authority over, or you might share transaction information with a certain environment that might not be compliant because yours have certain certifications. But it makes the reason why people are doing this is because it makes their lives easier. It's just the whole idea behind Shadow IT is the reason it exists is because there is a lot of red tape surrounding implementing certain software or certain tooling. And that red tape is there for a reason, normally because the company needs to be either compliant, it needs to have certain certification specs in place, they need to adhere to certain controls. And the layman doesn't know that. The business executives know this because they need to be responsible for these things. But the people on the work floor, if they are not readily informed or they are not aware of these requirements, they see it as red tape and limiting their ability to do things. That's why Shadow IT exists, is because people are trying to figure out ways to make their lives easier and their work in the short way possible, not the shortest way, the shortest time possible, but also the simplest way possible. And that's just right now prompting an AI builder tool to create something for you that does what you want it to do, and you just feed data into it. But that creates a giant problem for not only CTO, CIO, CISO, for every information security specialist, it creates a giant issue.
I suppose like the governance is lacking there, which it makes sense because it goes so fast, like the shadow IT explosion, so to speak. But would then, as for example, a sandbox environment help for an organization to that people can spin up vibe coded tools and applications, or is that not really working because you need to expose that you're going to expose data, maybe even outside that sandbox with those kinds of practices? What would you recommend to do?
As a company, you should have your own environments. You should have an AI officer, obviously, to leverage these technologies and have sessions with your employees to let them know that, hey, we have these facilities for you, so you can do it in a secure manner, or at least a manner that we support as a company. I think 80% of companies doesn't do this. They either don't know how to do it, they don't know what the landscape looks like, but also they have no means of creating facilities for their employees to spin up these easy quick wins. If you as a company provide your team or your employees with low threshold ways of spinning these things up that you can support, but also control from a governance perspective, it's a benefit because the users know, hey, we as a company have facilities to do this. We have an environment to do this. I don't need to go and put my Excel sheets in ChatGPT, for example, to do my work, but I have a closed off company environment that does it similarly, but securely. It's an easy win.
It's a lot on the plate of probably then usually the chief information officer or maybe the CTO or the COO. And I think, as you mentioned, that maybe requires a new role, and we call it the chief AI officer. I think from a perspective of where things are going, also looking at the history, bring your own device in 2000, from 2010 or so was a big thing. It's very similar in the sense of there was a big shift in, okay, so everyone wants to use his laptop also at home, using the same cell phone for work. I think this is a sort of a similar problem, only it goes way faster, which is interesting, right? Then people need to act fast because, as you saw, I think very recently, a vibe coded application that you reviewed, and then mainly from not only the architecture standpoint but also the security standpoint, it was just full of holes, right?
Yes. And as you say, it's not just one person that can do this. It's a bunch of people that need to have and share their ideas about this. It's not only a CTO or CIO. It's also information security. It's also operations. It's a bunch of people that need to put their heads together to do this, but also to think about the implications of what they are doing. Yes, like you said, we review these AI generated applications quite often. And if there's no thought behind this, or it's made by one person without consulting their responsible executives for this, it ends up being full of holes or not being checked by any experts. And that also lives somewhere. So if you do that, if a company doesn't not control this, but if a company doesn't have any facilities to give their employees means of doing this and they will do it by themselves, you're basically creating security holes left and right. And of course, the employees might not be allowed to do this, but if it makes their lives like 50% easier, or do their work 50% faster, they will probably still do this.
Right, and I think that's an interesting thing of it's now enabling people that usually are not anywhere near building applications. They are now able to do so. The question is
Yes.
with what kind of data they put in there and how do they expose the application. But it seems that it's a disaster waiting to happen for many companies. But I think the good thing from the European Union in this year somewhere, there is a sort of directive. I think it needs to be implemented from the top of my head also by countries themselves. But it is mandatory to have a sort of AI literacy for staff when they use tools, which is probably almost everyone currently. Which is a good thing, right? Many people don't know what they're doing, and security implications can be, or security and privacy implications can be really big. Maybe then, as a last question, also a bit for a lookout for next week review. We are going to review a couple of articles on OpenClaw, but also show how we implement that and some agents to do some work for Eli 5, just to show the possibilities, and also for our customers to show what it could do. Potentially, I say what it could do for the organization. What is this similar to your experience with vibe coded products? OpenClaw could also be like a disaster, right? If it falls into the hands of the wrong a user that has good intentions but builds something that is like totally unprotected.
Yes, these kinds of tools do their work best, but the more access you give it, the more things can go wrong. There's a lot of attack vectors. The more you expose these different tools to your own personal environment or company environment. The thing is, the whole AI literacy thing is a big thing because most people don't know that the AI state currently is basically just predicting words. It does it better every iteration we get there, but it has limitations. And because there's so much hype around it and so much in the news and so many new things are happening, people are also losing the plot because it's going too fast. And if you're not in this business, you think magic is happening. And there are good things happening with this, but it has limitations and people need to understand what it can and cannot do reliably. And also what the whole idea is behind it. So it's not some magic robot tool that you can ask everything in the world that's going to figure it out for you. It doesn't work that way. But people need to be educated. So that's why I think the whole AI literacy thing is a good thing. So the whole AI officer proposition that lays on the table is also a very good thing because that's the person that can educate their fellow people on how this works and how they can help them, and but also what they should and should not do with it.
I think it's a good thing that we are going to share a bit about what the work of the AI officer is in some of the upcoming article reviews. Of course, many people are writing about these types of roles, but we have our own perspective on it also. So I think it will be a perfect timing somewhere in the coming weeks to talk about that as well. So I want to thank you, Kishan, except if you have some more to address in this video call, but I want to thank you for your time and input.
Thanks, Floris.
Thank you.